This is the Career Foundation's Future at Work podcast and web series with our host, Evelyn Akselrod, as she explores critical topics affecting the workforce and workplace. Each episode, we focus on new and emerging trends across high-growth industries, including technology, sales and services, healthcare, finance, and the skilled trades. Visit us at www.careerfoundation.com to learn more.
Welcome to the Career Foundation's Future at Work webinar and podcast series. My name is Evelyn, and today we will be taking on part 3 of the Equity series, looking at disability inclusion in the workplace. Today, I'm joined by my colleague Mohamed and Nicole Tieze from our Empowering Abilities program here at the Career Foundation. Welcome, both of you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks for the opportunity, Evelyn.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to this conversation, but today it ends up being International Disabilities Day. And so we just also celebrated October, and that was, Disability Awareness Month, especially around employment. How's that different? How's that different from today? Ali, maybe you want to take that.
All right, thanks, Evelyn. It's a little bit different and the same at the same time. So it's the same subject where we're going with it. So December the 3rd, at the international level, United Nations recognizes as the Day for the Persons with Disabilities, or International Day for Persons with Disabilities. So that will cover across the world and different countries and continents and lands that we know and those we don't know. NDM, on the DEMO, the National Employment Awareness Month, is a Canadian one, where is people celebrate that month and look into the employment, specifically employment sector of individuals with disabilities. The December the 3rd International Day for Persons with Disabilities covers all aspects of lives of individuals with disabilities and tries to put into a kind of a pressure international world to be more inclusive, more open, and it covers like a very, very general or all aspects of the needs of persons with disabilities internationally or in our world.
Yeah, well, it's definitely worth celebrating.
Absolutely.
And so happy to see that on an international level. Nicole, we have this amazing employment program for persons with disabilities, and we have 3 of them across the organization. Tell us a little bit about, and both of you, Ali and Nicole, are working in that program. So tell us a little bit about that program and what it seeks to do.
Sure. Well, the Career Foundation has the program that you're speaking of called the Empowering Abilities Program. And we have 3 locations across the GTHA. So one in Hamilton, one at Weston and Lawrence, and one at Scarborough, where I'm based. So essentially, it's a program for persons who identify with having a disability or a health-related issue that are looking to work. Typically, our clients are a little bit more removed from the labor market, or they're just starting out. They might be youth. So we accept all ages and all types of disabilities. So it's not just for one condition. We have people who have mobility issues. We have people who have invisible disabilities and health issues, hearing, sight, all sorts of things. And so essentially what the program does is we have an employment component where we do some coaching in that for up to 10 weeks. Clients are able to access different training that's available to them that the program is able to fund. So if you're looking to get your forklift license, or if you're looking to maybe upgrade your accounting software, these are types of training that we can purchase for our clients and have them better prepared for employers. And then we set up a 12-week work experience placement for our clients and offer a subsidy to employers to help offset the cost of training. So essentially, clients have access to an employment advisor and job coach We have an employer accessibility specialist at all of our locations, and we have job developers. So we work with both the employer community and also the clients to make a good match. And after the 12-week placement, the goal is ultimately that the employers keep our clients employed, right? So that's
fantastic.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. And we've been running that program for a number of years now.
Yeah, 3 years, almost 3 years now. We're coming
3 years.
no more
Yeah.
3 years. Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay. Well, you've been working with employers and working with job seekers, trying to, help them to recognize that disability affects us all. I mean, personally, in the workplace, and so directly and indirectly, right? And so that's something that I think people need to recognize, that disability is not something foreign from them. It's actually in their families, it's in their neighborhoods. It affects us individually, and oftentimes, it doesn't even show up until later in life. Sometimes, it is just experience that people face, and some face it much more severely than others. But we do need to have conversations around disabilities to make it normalized, because it is part of our life, and we need to treat everyone fairly, no matter what circumstances they're faced in life. So I think it's an important conversation for us to have. I want to jump in and get specific around employment opportunities. Unemployment rate for people with disabilities has been high for a very long time. I was glad to see in some recent government announcements that there will be more investments to support people with disabilities to gain employment. Without employment, so many parts of our lives fall apart. And so when you're already dealing with a disability, having to deal with unemployment on top of that is, making your life even so much harder. Ali, talk to us a little bit about some of the challenges persons with disabilities are facing in the labor market today.
Well, thank you, Evelyn. And as you said, meaningful employment is that what we all desire, regardless whether our disability, whether you can see our disability or you cannot see it. I used to hear a very famous Ontario or Canadian broadcaster who passed away, who said one time in public radio, I think it was the CBC, I'm not sure of the radio, was it? Eventually, all of us, we're going to have a disability. So let's fix it for everybody else, make it Ontario or Canada accessible. All that means it takes, which includes employment accessibility, right? So individuals with disabilities and have been, the number, when you look at the unemployment rate, you kind of feel very, very difficult. You want to accept, like you will say, really, do we really have that kind of unemployment? And it's having to be facing one segment of our society, and the number is very high. And and I think if people want to recall in the past, even it's greater than Great Depression unemployment rate, if you want to call it that way. So the number is out there, and that also would have other impact in life, same as like social determinant of life. The health, well-being, housing, it's all connected to the employment. So individuals with disabilities across the world, or at least in our continent or our province or our city, unemployment rate is very high for people with disabilities. And the other thing that is that a lot of people are looking for jobs, and the jobs that individuals are looking for are meaningful job that with purpose, job that they can live in, job where they can contribute or play their share in the society. And so that is where the challenges and the gaps are coming in. We always see the numbers are not still there yet, but we also know a lot of people with disabilities are actively or inactively looking for employment or meaningful opportunities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And so what are some of the things that get in their way of achieving that?
There is a number of items that we can include in the basket, and I'm sure the basket is bigger than that. And one of them is the way we do recruitment and hire people, the general norm that we use in terms of recruitment and selection process, that is what you look at it, that's not working for a lot of people. So if you get used to it, that everybody was supposed to be going online, answering 200 questions to screen them out, and some people with disability that might not be accessible to them. If all the accessibility wasn't built on that process. So the processes are the issues in a lot of times. The other times is misunderstanding. It's that, it is when you as an individual, and I can talk about very openly this one because I do. Just let me go back a little bit. Like when I was a little child, I get a polio. So my disability is visible. You can see it. I walk with 2 canes, 2 crutches. So when I walk in, you will see that. A lot of other disability you're not able to see at all. So it could be learning, could be invisible. So the processes are not built, are not open enough to accommodate the needs of individuals, uniqueness of that individual. Some people may need an American Sign Language to pass the first level, or to be with them at that time so they can have a job interview properly and everything else. It could be, so the accessibility is what we're talking about of the processes, because we as a society set up our jobs certain ways. So one of the other examples that I can give you is that some individuals might have very strong technical abilities and could be the brilliant ever person that you ever met in terms of achieving that technical ability. But socially, when they are like many of you in front of you explaining what they can do, or their skill set might not come out as strong as the mainstream society, and we kind of overlook that. So you may have a genius person with technological advancement and everything else. However, at the interview level, might not be able to communicate the way the employment expected. There's a lot of physical barriers. There's a lot, sometimes is misunderstanding. And one of the other things that also alarm me is that also sometimes many employers, I think, we come across, or we just had a chat with, and sometimes some may indicate, say, but I'm afraid of, if I hire that individual, it's hard to let them go at the end. So that kind of afraid builds up a barrier of providing employment. You might not let go, that person is going to be so great, but that second guessing is also involved. So there's a lot of variables. Most of them socially constructed and can be easily removed if we all work together.
Yeah, I love that you said that. Sorry, Nicole, go ahead.
No, I think that's for sure. I mean, all of the barriers that you mentioned are definitely relevant, but I know employers oftentimes feel like, how do they make their workplace inclusive? How do they integrate and onboard this person who might have to work a little bit differently or have employment adapted? How does that affect their team, right? So I know that that's a fear that we see coming from employers when we're setting up that 12-week work experience placement. And so one of the key benefits of the program is that we go in and we can help with that onboarding process and adapt the manuals, or explain, with obviously the permission of the participant, explain to colleagues how you might be able to best work with this individual, right? And oftentimes what we find with that accommodation and kind of, I don't want to say, but normalizing the disability, is that it's not a great amount of accommodation that people have to implement, right? It could just be a schedule that works well for the participant, who's now the employee, so that it works with maybe different times that the person has to take their medication, or just accommodation is not as big as employers think it is, right?
Yeah, and I love your point, Ali, about socially constructed, and to Nicole's point about accommodation being actually something you do anyways for many of your employees. For example, we have parents. Parents need to go to parent pickup at a certain time, right? What do? We allow them to start work earlier, right? Or we allow them to work later on into the hours. And when people have a place where they feel that they belong, they contribute a great deal more than the 9 to 5 that they're actually paid to do. And so when we create environments that are inclusive, when we create environments that support the unique needs of our workforce, then we get a lot more back in return as
Absolutely.
employers, right? And so those accommodations are nothing in terms of your investment. In some cases, to your point, Nicole, it costs zero
It costs,
to
yeah,
do accommodations for people, and you get so much more back.
yeah,
And so when we're looking at a workforce that just experienced COVID, we've seen how quickly that those accommodations can be made
Can be.
when they're right, when they're beneficial to the employer. And so employers need to recognize that these accommodations are also, beneficial to them and also beneficial to people that they work with. When employers are faced with shortage of skills,
Yeah.
when they're faced with very low retention rates on their workforce, these are things that they're looking for anyway. And that lack of awareness is a huge barrier for them to reach those solutions. So thank
yeah.
you for sharing that.
Yeah,
So
can I pick on
yeah,
your point? I think you mentioned that point, and before COVID, the job market or the job, the way we work was totally different. And actually, some of the people with disability happen to be asking for that many years ago.
yes,
Can I some partially work from home? Can I completed this? And what? So, and I think in society now, where when I see this happening, as you said, everything come to the term. So I think maybe sometimes is a masses of the numbers and who's involved and decision making process and generally accepted the issues. And so I think that's a very if we very important point to understand how the labor market or the work shifted during the COVID. Could actually that was shifted for individuals with disabilities to make that contribution that they were always willing.
yeah,
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because there was such an impact on, many of us in the industry with various employment programs. And in speaking with our colleagues, Ali, like I think you can agree, we kind of just thought like, okay, here's another issue, we'll tackle it, right? Like we'll figure out, it's not easy to place people into employment when the current conditions of the labor market, because of the pandemic and that. But it was just something that we had to find a solution, right, to get our clients employed. And one of the great benefits of hiring people with disabilities is that they're great problem solvers because they've had to adapt
yeah.
constantly throughout their life, right? So that's important to
Yeah, and that will have not only the workplace but also in the customer base. When your customers know that you value inclusion for everybody, and I think it would have a very positive at the bottom line.
Yeah, so much to say. I mean, you raised so many important points that affect, and Nicole also mentioned it earlier, the effect of having people or the impact of having people with disabilities on your teams. Employers assume that that's a risk in some way, but it actually has demonstrated through surveys and studies a massive positive impact on a work team, right? And we know throughout this equity series that we've been doing, when we create inclusion for one group, we actually do that for everyone, and we make the workplace better for everyone. And employers are people too, and it actually makes it better for them as well. So I'm loving this. So as we go on to talk about talent retention, shortage of skills, we always hear about the opportunity to tap into an untapped talent pool of persons with disabilities. I mean, and we really group people, right? Persons with disabilities in this group as if they're a monolithic, one sort of experience, and that's really to our detriment. But talk to us a little bit, maybe Ali, in terms of what job when we talk about that untapped pool. What are we really talking about here? What's untapped talent?
Yeah. So historically, individuals or person happen to be person with disabilities being out of the labor market for disproportionately compared to the average Canadian. So the numbers that are out there that are unemployed are huge. So in that, if you flip it on the, if you look on the other side, means that is a labor market, labor resource that are available that when employers need to fill their positions. And an average individual with disability happen to have higher education skill set, like number of them graduate from high schools and colleges, have the technical skills, but somehow did not connected to the labor market. So that is a resource. So when if I am if I own a company, a private company that I'm looking for to enhance or my company, usually you will look for where you can find a lot of candidates that could fill that skill gap or the skill shortage that you have. So that's where the untapped talent pool comes in. We have a huge pool of Canadians with disabilities who are looking for employment, who are available, who are skilled, who are able, looking for opportunity to make an impact and meaningful employment.
Yeah, and we cannot talk about inclusion when we're leaving a massive group of people out of the labor market. And labor market, again, influences the quality of lives for people, right? And so keeping them, in this sort of deficit, it does not help the economy, does not help the company, does not help them. And we really need to be, like you said, flipping it on its head and looking at it from an opportunity perspective instead of a deficit. That's fantastic. On the other hand, many employers have expressed willingness to hire people with disabilities, but somehow can't attract enough qualified talent, they say. What are the issues here, and what can hiring employers do to attract more qualified employers? I think, Ali, you were touching on that a little bit earlier about the application process. Maybe, Nicole, you could talk to us a little bit and we can circle back to Ali.
Yeah, I think it comes down to even the job postings themselves. Like employers have to look at, is it accessible and compatible with, different softwares and assisted devices. I mean, it's hard, right? Because we're generalizing right now because there's so much that we could get specific on if we chose a disability, right, to talk about. But it could be, that the way that they're advertising and the job posting itself is not accessible, right? And it's not reaching the correct the candidates that could be qualified for that job. I think the testing process. I think a lot of the and I'm sorry, I'm blanking on the term, but the actual, like, when you're going and you're doing those pre-assessments. It's not very inclusive for a lot of people, right? You could bring up, if you're a newcomer to Canada and you might have a language barrier, you could even look at that. It may not be understood, right? Like the way that these questions are being asked. So if you have, a disability, like if you're autistic, you may not pick up on, I'm trying to say, like, the screening itself will screen you out when really what you could be doing is performing that job, right? So I think there's a lot of barriers and roadblocks when you look at the actual hiring process itself. And again, it could be something also that's in the job posting that somebody who has a disability will screen themselves out. Right. Mm-hmm. So I'm trying to think of an example right now, but it could be something in the actual job posting and it's just one minor thing. Yeah. And the person has already disqualified themselves because they've been told no.
Yeah. I mean, for example, as you're speaking, I'm thinking of a sales position, right? Mm-hmm. And so, we require a car, 80% travel. Well, during COVID, guess what? 0% travel, and people are still doing sales.
Yeah. People are
right?
still, yeah.
Sales may be booming.
Yeah. And so, but before COVID, we never really looked at that. And it could have been an opportunity to engage a ton of persons with disabilities into the labor market, right? And so they could do their work because they understand the product, they understand that market, but they just, wouldn't be the one to be traveling everywhere. And
Right.
so, that I think is a good example of
Well,
how we keep people out of the labor market without recognizing that we're actually putting up barriers for them.
right. Or must have a vehicle, right? And it's, I mean, you can easily find a way to do the job without a vehicle, right? You can still travel and you can still do those things, right? So it's something that's a very simple example to give. I wish I had a better one, but the job posting itself, I find, screens out a lot of people, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you see that with people with disabilities, and you see it with people who are new graduates that don't have that experience. How do you get that experience, right? So people are automatically screening themselves out.
Yeah.
So we need. I think what Nicole's saying is that on the other, if you look at the other way around, is that we want employers to invest on the job posting, same as they invest on the marketing. Come across as a very inclusive, somebody, some willingness showing in the job posting that to start with, that you're really, really interested in making the environment more inclusive, and in another word, enhancing your customer base, enhancing your product base, enhancing your profit at the end of the day, right? And making that effort. So sometimes when we look for like a skill set, we deliberately look for that. So one of that energy also be, we know there's an untapped resource. We know there's a lot of people, individuals with disabilities, who are looking for employment. Am I making enough effort to reach to them, to reach out to organizations as like Career Foundation's Empowering Abilities program, saying, I have this particular job. Do you have any candidate? Or calling different places. So making that effort on that level. On the other thing is that also not be afraid of that individual. It's has the responsibility of every single disabled person on the world. No, it's individual, it's a person. It comes with the skill sets, and it comes with the talent and abilities, and maybe some little here and there shortcomings. They're not responsible for the rest of the society, right? So when you see that, when employers are not afraid of that, is that, if I can't find X employee, maybe I can find another candidate who have a better skill set, or maybe I can include another candidate. So one thing I remember in the past was many, many years ago, when was one job posting we come across, and this hit very close to home. It was an individual who happened to be individual with disability who were looking for a job, but she can only do a part-time at that time, but her situation. She was looking part-time job. An employer posted a job that mirrors exactly her skills, but is asking for 40 hours a week, full-time. And we discussed and we talked and we strategized. So one of the conclusion was like, what about if you apply, and during the interview, if the employer really likes you, do they have other options? And I remember that it was a happy ending story. This one was really like worked in a way that we were not expecting. Is that actually employer broke down the job and said, you know what? I was looking for this skill set from many, many years ago. I can hire another person. Actually, I have 2 people now working for me. I can get even more of my work done by reaching out to that particular talent. So that's when Nicole is speaking for the hours, right? And that kind of investment is what we're looking for long term. For more innovative products and customer base, and making efforts and connecting with the programs that out there. As we said, Nicole was indicating about the accommodation. Accommodation is not that expensive. If it's an issue, all we probably need to reach out to organizations such as ours and say, well, this is what I need for accommodation. Do you guys have any? Can you offer me any help? Probably employees will be surprised how much effort will go into help to accommodate with that candidate, so the individual can have that job that they're interested in.
Yeah. And we've seen the best companies out there
Absolutely.
doing this kind of investment in their recruitment process. I just went through a hiring process, not myself, someone else in my family went through a hiring process, and the employer was just incredible with how they prepared the candidate before they met the recruiter, before they met with the hiring manager. They set up, times when they actually prepared the candidates, and said, here are the kinds of questions typically that they ask. These are the people, and here's their background. And when you're getting ready for the interview, make sure you have a glass of water. Like, oh my gosh, it was just incredible. And that's just like, a small thing. In Silicon Valley, the leaders of industry out there, they are hiring people with autism specifically.
Yeah, particularly.
Specifically, and they are creating an economy out there that supports people with autism, because the advantage you get as an employer from people with the specific disability, I think not. Advantage, that's a strategic advantage that they have because of autism, is a superpower to, be detail oriented, understand things in a way that, we typically don't. And that's the strategic advantage. But when we, in these normal, if you will, way of writing a job posting, somebody with autism will look at that and say, wow, like, what are you really asking here? This is a very confusing job posting, right? Because they're very analytical people. And so they're analyzing very specifically. And so if you have a job out there who you require a programmer, you require somebody with really strong analytical skills, you're missing out if you're not thinking about people with autism, for example, right? And so we know that there are programs in Silicon Valley, for example, that are specifically recruiting. The city of Toronto is currently hiring for people with disabilities. The banks have some really great initiatives around this. And so, we in the nonprofit space tend to work with small to medium-sized employers, but those employers actually look at large employers to say, what are the best practices that those folks are using that I can learn from and I can take advantage of, right? And so having programs like our Empowering Abilities program will be able to help small to medium-sized businesses access resources that large companies have that they need. And so tapping into that is important. Even this morning, I saw World Economic Forum posted a video where they said there was a massive spike in women applying to jobs when a job posting said the word flexibility in the job description.
Look at that, yeah.
Right? And so we're not just talking about people with disabilities here, we're talking about everyone. And so when we try to create inclusive hiring practices, it will allow us to be inclusive and draw candidates that we will benefit from, that, everyone needs some support, right? Everyone needs support for their unique life circumstances.
Yeah, imagine when a customer comes to your door and they see someone they can relate to the similar challenges that they're going through, whether that is an individual using American Sign Language, ASL, who's happen to be hearing impaired, and see that. Just imagine what kind of communication would go in there. The customer would automatically go to that person, will discuss what their needs are, and you hear you. So we're talking about more in terms of reflecting on the society that we live in, that we serve, that we're part of, and that we work with.
Yeah, absolutely. I know a colleague of mine, he goes to a special coffee shop specifically because that's the environment that is inclusive, and they hire people with disabilities, and he feels good when he goes there. Right?
And we will all invest in that, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not the nice thing to do. And I think, Ali, you're trying to say that it's not the nice thing to do, and it's not just the right thing to do. It makes absolute business sense.
Business case, absolutely.
To do this. Yeah, absolutely. Nicole, I'm going to start wrapping up, but I really want to sort of give you an opportunity to share a little bit about the national research project that we're going to be, that's going to be taking off pretty soon.
Sure, yeah. So the Career Foundation has partnered with George Brown College and also CNIB, And we are doing a 3-year national research project. And it's focused on finding people who have a disability, and what we're going to interview them and figure out what was their path in order to get to the mid-level career position that they have. And you'll see a whole bunch of interesting jobs, and what was their pathway, and how did they get there, and what kind of accommodations did they require, if any, and what type of training or education did they pursue in order to get there, right? Their career path. So that's something that's active, and we have clients that are interested in being interviewed and working and all of that. So it will definitely be interesting to see on a national level how did individuals get to where they are, despite the barriers and challenges.
Yeah, and I'm hoping that it will be something that inspires both employers and job seekers who have a disability to say, if some of those folks can do it, then I can do it. And so therefore, we will see a lot more people starting to integrate into the labor market through the actions of both, the businesses and those job seekers. So I'm excited for that project. And so I'm going to sort of end by saying, if there are companies out there who have employees that, you've created a wonderful environment for them to really prosper and, grow their career, regardless of their difference in abilities, reach out to us. We would love to hear from you. We would love to showcase those employees, but also showcase you as an employer, an inclusive employer, and we'll also love to support you in your ongoing hiring through the Empowering Abilities program. So with that, I want to thank my colleagues, Ali and Nicole, for spending this time with me. I mean, we could talk about this all day with these two passionate folks. We could talk about this all day, but I really want to appreciate your time and thank you for spending it with me, especially on this important International Disabilities Day. And so we're going to be sharing this with our employers and our job seekers. If any of you are interested in getting some more support, please reach out to Nicole and Ali at the Career Foundation. The Career Foundation, as you know, we support all people in job search, and we support all employers in creating their talent pipeline. So if you want to learn a little bit more about the Career Foundation, feel free to visit us at careerfoundation.com. So with that, I will thank you all for your time. Thank you, listeners, for joining us, and be well and stay safe.
Thanks for tuning in to the Career Foundation's Future at Work podcast and web series. To learn more about our workforce development initiatives, visit our website at www.careerfoundation.com and follow us on social media. To listen to our previous episodes, subscribe to the Future at Work podcast on iTunes or Spotify.